Recently wanted to turn this room into a home studio. There's quite a lot of natural reverb and a bit of flutter echo in the room. The flutter echo is the sound bouncing back from one wall to the other rapidly, and you can really hear that it has a really distinct sound. So those problems will muddy up what we are hearing, and if we want to do some critical listening in our room, we'll need to mitigate those issues. An easy way to do so is using acoustic panels. When we Google acoustic panels, there are quite a few options. We could use cheap foam pyramids. Those usually only treat the high frequencies, typically above 1000 Hz. So that's not really a route I want to take. We also see things like curtains and sound absorbing panels from stores like IKEA, and while those things will help, they also do little for bass in a room, which can be quite an issue in a small rectangular room like this. The best option for most rooms is to use professional broadband absorber panels, but those can cost quite a penny. A single panel can easily go for €250 or more. I made a little design up front of how I wanted to hang the panels around the room. My design used 18 panels in total. That would have cost me around €4,500. That's quite a bit of money for me, so I decided to make some myself, as cheaply as possible. In my case, they ended up costing even less than 5% of that price. To start, we'll need an insulating material to absorb the sound waves. My material of choice was rock wool, as it's easily available around here and has excellent acoustic properties. It's also very fire resistant and it's quite firm, which is a nice bonus as well. Alternatively, you could also use some other materials, but the sound needs to travel through the panel, so the sound waves can convert to heat inside of the panel through friction. You don't want to use an insulation material that instantly reflects the sound back at you. Make sure that it's something porous. For example, glass wool or recycled denim insulation. I did not opt for either of those materials because of the health hazards of glass wool, and denim insulation is quite expensive over here. The thicker and more dense our insulation panel is, the better it will also work for lower frequencies. For example, 10 cm thick panels will start absorbing sound from about 200 Hz, and 20 cm thick panels will absorb from about 100 Hz. Of course, such a thickness is not always possible, so we have to do what works best in our room. For easy mounting and placement, we'll want to make a frame to hold the insulation material. For this I used some free scrap wood that my dad had laying around. Thanks, Dad. If you don't have scrap wood, you can easily buy some wood at a DIY store. You want to cut pieces of the wood so they can fit around the insulation material. To mount the frame together, we'll be using simple wood screws. I'll start by lining up the wooden planks as a rectangle. If you have tiles on the ground that line up in 90-degree angles to your wall, this can definitely help to do this without any tools. Next, we pre-drill small holes for the wood screws. This allows us to easily screw in the wood screws, and it stops the wood from splitting when doing so. We want to repeat this on every corner. I suggest doing one side at a time and then turning the entire frame once you're ready with that side, and then you can do the other side. In the end, you'll end up with a nice wooden frame. We repeat the process for the total amount of frames we need. In my case, that was 18 frames. Next, we'll need to cut cloth for both sides of the panel. This not only makes them look nicer, because you don't just want some rock wool against your wall, it also helps to secure the rock wool in our frame. For the front of the panel, I suggest using cotton, which will let through the sound waves, but keeps the fibers of the rock wool inside. This is important, as we do not want to breathe in particles from the insulation. For the fabric, you can also use any color of your choosing. Pick something that matches your interior. The fabric for the front will wrap around to the back of the panel, so we want to measure that by overturning the frame on top of the cloth. Then we can cut the cloth with scissors. Make sure to keep a centimeter or two of margins on all sides to be able to secure the cloth to the back of the frame later. If you fold the cloth double before doing so, you can cut two pieces while measuring once. For the back of the panel, we can use any type of cloth that will hold the fibers inside. I use a thick fabric that my girlfriend was so nice to give to me for free. Also a thank you for that. If you want to use the same fabric as you used for the fronts, you can definitely do that as well. The back fabric will not wrap around, so we can just put the frames on top of the fabric and cut around the edges. Next, we can start assembling the panels. We start with the back side. We stretch the back fabric over the frame. and use a staple shooter to attach the fabric to the frame. Start with the corners and then work our way around the edges to make sure everything is nice and tight. Once done, we cut the excess cloth away. Next we turn around the panel. We get our rock wool panels and friction fit them inside of the frame. If you need to make the rock wool panels smaller, you can easily cut them with a normal kitchen knife. Then we turn over the panel on top of the cloth for the front. Again, we stretch the fabric over the frame and staple it to the back of the panel. We start with the top and bottom. Then we fold that fabric under the fabric on the sides of the panel and start stapling everything nicely. Make sure to stretch the cloth every time before you staple. Once that is done, the panel is ready. Now we can add a screw eye to the top so we can hang the panel on the wall or a ceiling. It can be a good idea to leave a bit of space between the wall and the absorption panel. This will even slightly lower the frequency at which it starts working. Alternatively, you can also place some feet underneath of the panel so you can move them around as you desire. This can also be handy if, for example, you're renting a property and you don't want to damage the walls. As for the placement of the panels, it's always a good idea to treat the first reflection points first. So this means the side walls in between your listening position and the speakers, the back wall, so over there, and the front wall, so behind the speakers. Oh, I just noticed I forgot to mention this. The ceiling is also a reflection point, so you might want to hang a cloud for that. Sometimes bass traps in corners can also help to dampen low frequency resonant room notes. These are of course more general guidelines, and some rooms might need extra treatment in certain places, depending on the room and its purpose. A good channel for more information about room acoustics is Acoustics Insider on YouTube, so if you have more interest in that, definitely go check that out. As for the price, I ended up spending €4.21 on cotton per panel and €7.63 on rock wool, which totals to €11.84 per panel. As I told you in this video, I was able to get some materials for free though. If I needed to buy everything new, the total per panel would probably have increased to about €25 per panel, with wood being the most expensive. This of course greatly depends on where you live and the cost of materials over there. You can also easily find wood on second-hand markets online, so it's definitely possible to do it cheaper than that price as well. Before I end this video, I'd like to quickly talk about my first producer album that I released since the last video. If you want to support me, definitely give it a listen on your favorite streaming service or purchase the album. I'll leave a link in the description below. If you have any questions or remarks about this video, be sure to leave them in the comments below. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Thanks for watching.